What does it feel like to be left standing at the altar while the woman you spent 5 years loving runs into another man's arms? On the day of my wedding, the man who had once shattered Clara's heart walked back through the door. Just like that. No warning, no explanation. He simply appeared, and she simply ran. She said, "As long as you come back, I will always choose you." And as I watched the two of them walk out together, I had to press my lips tightly together to stop myself from laughing. Because honestly, this was the best thing that could have happened to me. I was finally free of that beautiful, dangerous, completely unhinged monster. Clara had been my childhood sweetheart, or at least that was the story everyone believed. The real story began with a man named Sebastian. He was the kind of person people called magnetic, the kind whose presence in a room made everyone else feel slightly smaller. Clara had fallen for him the way people fall from great heights, fast and completely. And Sebastian, once he had fully won her heart, had done what conquerors do. He walked away without looking back. She had screamed his name in the street that day, her voice breaking like glass. She had begged him, pleaded with him, run after him with her heels in her hand. He never turned around. After he left, Clara fell apart. She stopped eating. She stopped sleeping. She started drinking, even though her body could not handle alcohol at all. Many nights she drank until her stomach bled and I sat beside her on the bathroom floor, holding her hair back and reminding her to breathe. For 5 years I stayed by her side, quietly, patiently, being whatever she needed me to be. And then, after 5 years, she finally agreed to marry me. We were 3 minutes away from exchanging rings when Sebastian walked back in. She did not hesitate even for a second. The ring dropped from her fingers and she was already running before it hit the floor. She threw both arms around Sebastian like a woman terrified that if she loosened her grip he would dissolve again. From across the room he looked over her shoulder at me and smiled. Not a happy smile. A triumphant one. A smile that said, "Do you see, Daniel? 5 years of your life versus 30 seconds of my standing here, and look who won." The wedding hall erupted. Guests gasped and whispered and half rose from their seats. Clara's father, Mr. Hargrove, was shaking with rage. He grabbed his cane and swung it hard at Sebastian. The crack of wood against skull was sharp and ugly in the sudden silence. Blood ran down Sebastian's forehead in a thin red line. He did not move. He did not even flinch. Clara spun around and shielded him with her body, tears pouring down her face. She took his face in both hands and looked at him like he was the only real thing in the world. "You absolute idiot," she choked out. "Who takes a bride like this? Couldn't you have just said, 'Come with me'? Do you still want me?" Clara asked him, her voice breaking on every word. Sebastian smiled. It was a slow, gentle smile, the kind designed to undo a person completely. "Of course," he said. "I told you before. You are my little princess. I will always wait for you. That will never change." Mr. Hargrove looked as though he might collapse from sheer fury, but no one was paying attention to him. Hand in hand, Clara and Sebastian walked out of the hall together. Just before they passed through the doors, Sebastian turned back and looked at me one last time. His lips moved in silence. "I told you. I can still beat you." And he was not wrong. He had already paid me a visit the night before. He had sat across from me with our wedding rings on the table between us and laughed. "Daniel," he said, "those rings were actually made by Clara and me." "Did she tell you that?" She had not. She had begged me, very sweetly, to use this particular pair instead of the ones I had chosen. I had said yes. And now, looking at the letters engraved inside, C and S pressed together in the metal, I understood exactly what I had said yes to. Sebastian pushed up his sleeve and showed me the bracelet on his wrist. Black obsidian. It matched the silver one Clara never took off, not once, the one she had bought at some roadside stall with him years ago. If I ever came close to touching it, she would pull her arm away like I had burned her. He looked at me the same way he always had, since high school, with flat and total contempt. "So what if I broke her heart? So what if you stayed 5 years? Do you believe that tomorrow I can still beat you?" He laughed at his own question. "Because I am her Prince Charming. And Prince Charming is always pure and shining. And so I stood there, watching the two of them walk away together, their steps perfectly matched, their silhouettes fitting neatly into each other, and I bowed my head like a man swallowing grief. Except I was not swallowing grief at all. I was running through every painful memory I owned just to stop myself from laughing out loud. I believed him completely. I wanted him to beat me even more than he wanted to. Because I knew something that nobody else in that hall knew. This world is a story. Clara is the heroine. Sebastian is the male lead. And I am the malicious childhood friend, the obstacle, the resentful supporting character placed in their path to make their love more interesting to watch. If I had been following my own instincts and not the plot, I would have disconnected Clara's oxygen tube the morning they admitted her to the hospital. Because she is not a sweet, tragic girl who just loves the wrong man. She is a complete and total sociopath, and she has known what she was since she was 16 years old. When we were in school, I once watched a boy confess to her. "Clara," he said nervously, "I like you." She looked up at him with that perfect, gentle smile and said, "Oh. Then are you willing to give me your heart?" The boy froze, then nodded, overwhelmed by his own luck. And Clara pulled out a knife and stabbed it into his chest. Blood spread across his shirt and across her face. She wiped it away slowly with the back of her hand. Then she looked across the room to where I was pressed against the wall, unable to move. "My dear childhood friend," she said softly, "what did you see?" "Nothing," I said. My face had gone completely white. I didn't see anything. That was the beginning of my education. When Clara truly falls for someone, she becomes her most dangerous self. Because that person becomes her favorite toy. She pressed her hand flat against my chest that day, felt my heart hammering against my ribs, stood on her toes, and whispered in my ear like someone confiding a secret. "Don't worry. I like you far too much to kill you simply like that." So to everyone who saw us, Clara was devoted and gentle and deeply in love with me. In reality, I spent most of that time desperately hoping someone else would be willing to take that particular blessing off my hands. Clara belonged to the Hargrove family, one of the oldest and most respected families in the city. I was the son of their driver. The rich boys at school never let me forget it. There was always someone on the football pitch ready to throw a ball at the back of my head, and then laugh and say, "Sorry, I figured since your dad drives for a living, you must have great spatial awareness." But every boy who laughed at me that way would be on his knees by the end of the same afternoon. Clara would look at his fingers and sigh, in that way she had, like she was genuinely admiring something beautiful. Then she would step down, slowly and deliberately, and the sound of something cracking would follow. She always smiled when she heard it. Just as satisfying as I imagined, she would say. Every night she would slip into my small room in the servants' quarters. She would sit on my desk, pull me toward her by the collar, and kiss me with a kind of fierce possessiveness that made it difficult to breathe. It was not love. I understood that even then. It was ownership. Everything changed the day Sebastian transferred to our school. He walked up to me that first week and looked me over the way you might look at something disappointing you found on the bottom of your shoe. "So you're Clara's childhood friend," he said. I nodded. He smiled, not kindly. "Stop fooling yourself. She only likes you because I haven't shown up yet. I am the man this story was written for." I had even tried to warn him. I told him plainly, "Stay away from her. She is not someone you can manage." He had laughed. "A woman like her might be beyond you. But I am not like you." After Sebastian arrived, Clara's attention shifted within a week. Suddenly I was the one on the ground after school. Sebastian had someone force a live toad into my mouth while he stood back and watched with open delight, clapping slowly. "A toad like you belongs with your own kind," he said. "And you think you deserve better?" Clara stood beside him and handed him a bottle of water with a tenderness I had genuinely never seen from her before. "Are you thirsty?" she asked, her eyes soft. He accepted it, glanced at me over her head, and smiled with pure satisfaction. I turned away before they could see me smile back. What Sebastian did not understand was this. The better Clara treats someone, the more terrifying she will eventually become toward them. After Sebastian successfully won her heart, he disappeared immediately. He never stayed long enough to find out what happened to the people Clara loved most. He never saw what she kept in the basement. He left before the real story started, Which meant, in his mind, Clara would always remain the heartbroken girl who loved him beautifully and helplessly. When he left, Clara did not grieve the way most people grieve. She raged. Not because she had lost the person she loved, but because she had laid out the most careful trap of her life and the prey had simply walked out before she could spring it. And marrying me had always been part of that trap. She needed the appearance of moving on. She needed someone settled and devoted standing beside her, someone Sebastian would be unable to stand watching replace him. Someone whose happiness would be enough to draw him back across whatever distance he had put between them. I had always known this. I had smiled and nodded and helped her plan a wedding, because the plot required it of me, and because I had a plan of my own. Clara returned to the Hargrove estate with Sebastian, and none of it surprised me, because I had heard a conversation the night before that I was not supposed to hear. Sebastian had been speaking to his system, the invisible machinery that governed his purpose in this world. The system had said, "Host, you have already received a reward of 5 million for completing the first conquest mission. Are you certain you want to accept the mission again?" And Sebastian had replied, "Of course. As long as I take everything Daniel has, I can stay in this world permanently. What is there to go back to? Here I am the only protagonist." The system warned him, "If the mission fails, you will be erased." He had laughed. With a mission this easy, failure would take more effort than success. The very next morning, Sebastian knelt before Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove and begged them, with extraordinary sincerity, for permission to marry their daughter. Clara knelt beside him, crying beautifully, and pleaded with her parents to understand. Mr. Hargrove's face went a deep, dangerous red. "During that car accident," he said tightly, "Daniel's father gave his own life for mine. And Daniel spent 5 years by your side. You are being unforgivably ungrateful. I will not allow this, not while I am breathing." But his voice softened by the end of the same afternoon. "Fine," Mr. Hargrove said at last, looking at Sebastian with a fondness that would have been funny if it had not cost me 3 years of my life. "You're my daughter. I can't help it. And the more I look at this boy, the more I like him. From now on, treat Daniel as a brother. Saving a man's life. 5 years of loyal companionship. None of it weighed as much as the halo of the male lead. The branch company I had spent 3 years building was handed to Sebastian with a single sentence. I became his assistant. He sat in my president's chair, crossed his feet on my desk, and ordered me to bring him tea. When I handed it to him, he poured the boiling liquid over my arm deliberately, then watched with mild curiosity as the skin turned red and blistered. Then he picked up the ashtray from the desk and swung it toward my face. "You are an NPC," he said pleasantly. "And you thought you could compete with me." "Even then," I responded with patience. I even took him to see Clara's basement. The blood-stained walls. The instruments lined up along the shelves. I told him, calmly and clearly, what she was, what she had done to the men who came before him, what she was capable of. He grabbed my collar and laughed. "So what if she is Yandere? That just makes things exciting. And a villainous heroine would never hurt her own male lead." He dropped his voice and added, "As for you, tonight I am going to make sure she truly enjoys working on the men who keeps getting in our way." That night Clara came to my room. She stood at my bedside, holding a knife, tilting it slowly in the dim light. Her expression was thoughtful in the way that meant she was considering several options at once. "Sebastian told me to teach you a proper lesson," she said. I spread my hands. "Are you planning to kill me, then?" But before I could finish the sentence, she was already moving. She pressed herself against me and kissed me fiercely, her breath uneven, her voice shaking with something that was not quite fear and not quite joy. "How could I?" she said against my mouth. "I came to ask you how you want him to die. Should I shave him down slowly, piece by piece, and gift the result to my favorite person? Just like Conqueror number 15. I looked at her steadily. "Not yet. We still need him." She pulled back, eyes bright and hungry. Even so, she accepted the answer. Because she always did, with me. "That's Conqueror number 49, I said quietly. "Even if the entire world loves you, your Yandere heroine loves only the NPC." She kissed me again, slower this time, her lips soft and insistent. "Why do you keep making me hold back?" she whispered. "I am going completely mad. I want to end him right now. I brushed my thumb across her lips. Behave yourself. If you don't, I will stop liking you. Her pupils dilated. You told me to cooperate with his mission. You told me to leave with him at the wedding. I did everything you asked. Every single thing. So why do I still have to stay with him? I belong to you and only you. I smiled at her. Because I only want things that belong to someone else. Women included. The silence in the room became very heavy and very still. She kissed my neck and said, softly and carefully, all right. Whatever you want, I will do. The next morning Sebastian sent me out for coffee. When I came back limping, he burst into laughter. Clara's childhood friend. I only told her to teach you a small lesson. I didn't expect her to break your actual leg. Hilarious. When I handed him the cup, he stuck out his foot. I stumbled, went down on my knees. He grabbed me by the hair and pushed my head toward the floor. Knock your forehead on the ground, he said, and beg. If I'm feeling generous, I might ask Clara to show you some mercy. So I did it. I knocked my head against the floor, again and again, as many times as he told me to. He watched with obvious enjoyment, fingers tapping lightly on the desk. At the doorway, I caught Clara's eye. She was watching with that specific expression I knew better than any other. Her lips were moving in silence. Sebastian turned around. What did you say? She smiled sweetly. 25. That's right, he said, pleased with himself. He knocked his head 25 times for me. I knew that smile of hers very well. When Conqueror number 28 had smashed 3 beer bottles over my head, she had watched with that same soft smile and whispered the number 3. She had stabbed him 3 times afterward. A few days later Sebastian arrived at my home with a group of men and a van full of dog food and expensive toys. He went through every room, throwing open doors, clearly enjoying himself. Where is that useless mutt of yours? He called out. I don't keep trash breeds, but since it's yours, I suppose I'll take it off your hands. He was talking about Biscuit. Biscuit was a stray dog my father had rescued from the street. He gave her to me on my 20th birthday, with a small note saying she would keep me company when he could not. 1 month after that birthday, my father died in a car accident. That accident had been arranged. He had tampered with the car and placed himself in it deliberately, because he was terminally ill and had decided to use whatever life he had left to save Mr. Hargrove, to secure a debt that would protect me. He lay in the hospital afterward, barely able to draw breath, and told me not to be sad. He said Biscuit would stay with me and keep me company for him. And now Biscuit was about to be taken. She heard the rustle of the food packaging and came running, tail whipping back and forth, ears up, completely delighted by the toys spread across the floor. She had never seen anything so exciting. Biscuit, I said, hating myself for how much it sounded like a plea, come here. Come to me. She ignored me entirely. She buried her nose in the food and ate with absolute happiness, her tail still going. Sebastian walked over and patted my face in a slow, condescending way. Daniel, he said, I am the protagonist and you are a supporting character. No matter what you try to hold on to, you will always lose it. Your father left you. Clara left you. And now your dog doesn't even look at you. He paused for effect. An NPC's life has no meaning. You exist only to move the plot forward. Stop dreaming about things that were never yours. Something broke open in my chest. My father never abandoned me, I said, and my hands were already around his throat before I had decided to move. His face went from red to purple. He was laughing even as he struggled, hysterical and delighted. Go ahead, he wheezed, strangle me. I dare you. And then the pain hit me. It started in my chest and spread outward like fire through every nerve in my body until I was on my knees on the floor, unable to move. Sebastian stepped on my head. That is what happens when an NPC deviates from the plot, he said pleasantly. Only the protagonist has freedom in this world. Remember that. After he left I stayed on the floor for a long time. Then I raised my head. Don't worry, I said to the empty room. I am going to kill you. And the system behind you. Every single piece of it. Biscuit forgot me quickly. When she saw me after that, She no longer ran toward me with her tail wagging. She looked through me like I was not there. I did not blame her. She had not chosen it. Neither had I. NPCs receive their instructions and carry them out. We have no power to refuse. We are built to be forgettable, to be background, to serve the story's main characters and then step aside. Sebastian unclipped Biscuit's leash one afternoon in the garden, crouched down beside her, and pointed at me with his cigarette. "Go," he said. "Bite him." She launched herself forward, and I closed my eyes. The pain I was bracing for never came. When I opened my eyes, Biscuit was standing directly in front of me. Still. Quiet. Her eyes were wet. Sebastian screamed at her from across the garden, furious and confused, but she did not move. She simply looked at me. Then she lowered her head and licked the back of my hand, once, exactly the way she had done every single day for 5 years. Then she turned and ran at Sebastian with everything she had and sank her teeth into his leg. Blood poured down his calf. He started punching her, screaming, completely undone. Tears poured down my face faster than I could manage them. She was not malfunctioning. She was defying the system. She was choosing me over the programming that had been rewritten inside her, keeping the promise that had never been written down anywhere, the one my father had made for her. Biscuit began to tremble almost immediately. The system punished her for it. Her body shook and buckled. Sebastian grabbed her hind leg and swung her head against the ground. The sound it made is something I will never be able to describe, and I do not want to. I rushed forward and gathered her up. There was blood at the corner of her mouth. She was not breathing. Sebastian looked down at us with a bored expression. An NPC is still an NPC, even with a conscious mind. This is what happens when something small tries to hurt the protagonist. He crouched down, patted my cheek with 2 fingers, and said, "Daniel. This is just the beginning. The real fun is still ahead." I held her from morning until night. I felt the warmth leave her body in slow degrees, like light fading out of a room, until there was nothing left but cold. Clara found me there and dropped to her knees beside me, holding me so tightly I could feel her shaking. Her voice was raw and ugly with rage. "Tell me how you want him to die. I will do it tonight." I took her by the shoulders and held her still. "No," I said. "If we kill him, they will send another one. They will always send another one. I want him and the system both, at the same time." I gently opened Biscuit's eyes one last time. "Watch closely," I told her. "Watch how I send the people who did this to you straight to where they belong." The more kindly Clara treated me, the more insane with jealousy Sebastian became. One evening she made dinner. Not for a guest, not for a special occasion. She simply cooked, and she set a place for me. Sebastian came home, saw the table, and smashed every plate and bowl in the kitchen. He grabbed me by the collar, still shaking. "She never goes into the kitchen," he said, his voice cracking. "Not once in her life, and she actually cooked for you." After he stormed out, I smiled to myself in the wreckage of the kitchen. Because Sebastian had made a mistake that would cost him everything. He had actually fallen in love with Clara. Not as a mission, not as a conquest, but genuinely, stupidly, terrifyingly in love. And that was the trap. I heard the system try to warn him one evening, "Host, the system has detected some abnormalities in the heroine's behavior." Sebastian panicked. Has she fallen for Daniel again? The specific problem has not yet been identified. I remind you, if this mission fails, you will be completely erased. Not relocated. Not reset. Erased from every space, in every form. You still have one chance to terminate the mission and return to the real world. Do you wish to terminate? Sebastian was quiet for a long time. Then he said he needed time to think. The next evening Clara made a full table of food. She waited for Sebastian to come home, wearing an apron I had never seen her wear before, her hands smelling of garlic and oil. When he walked in she looked at him with large, soft eyes and said, "These are all your favorite dishes. I know I was difficult before. I know I lost my temper with you too easily. While you were gone I practiced every day. I wanted to be ready. Sebastian, from now on, whatever you want to eat, I will cook it. Please don't leave me again." Before she even finished speaking, he pulled her into his arms. Completely undone. He glanced over her shoulder at me, victorious as always, then nodded at my bowl. Why does he get some too? Clara picked up a piece of short rib and held it to his mouth with a slight pout. You always said you loved this recipe. I could never get it right, so I had Daniel taste test it for me while I was practicing. Is it right this time? Sebastian laughed, charmed, and shot me a sideways look of pure satisfaction. Someone like you is only useful for taste testing. He actually said that out loud. That night I heard him tell the system, with quiet certainty, that he was staying. That he had chosen this world. That he was choosing Clara. And that same night, Clara was kissing me breathless against the wall of my bedroom, her arms around my neck, her skin hot, her voice reduced to a whisper. Say you love me, she said. I love you, I told her. Her pupils trembled. She pressed her face against my shoulder and made a sound so soft I almost missed it. I looked across the room and smiled. Welcome, Conqueror number 49. Welcome to the part of the story you did not read carefully enough. Sebastian had a car accident. Both kidneys were damaged severely. He needed a transplant. He lay in the hospital bed looking pale and diminished and still, somehow, as arrogant as ever. Daniel, he said when I visited, take care of yourself lately. After all, your kidney is going to belong to me soon. Don't let it go to waste. This was the final mission. According to the plot, Clara would force me to donate my kidney to him, and I would die on the operating table. Clean, efficient, final. I looked at him for a long moment. That is my kidney, I said. Why would I give it to you? He laughed until tears came to his eyes, as though I had said something brilliantly stupid. Because I am the protagonist. I want your life, and she will hand it over without hesitation. He took out his phone and called Clara. She did not answer. He called again. And again. And again. The phone rang in silence each time, and the laughter faded from his face 1 degree at a time until there was nothing left but a pale, dawning terror. I leaned down toward him. She has not been to see you once since the accident, I said quietly. Haven't you noticed? He grabbed my collar. I removed his fingers one by one, unhurried. His eyes were wide and hollow. He looked like a man who had just realized he was standing in a room with no doors. I know what you are doing, he said, his voice rising. You are trying to drive us apart. You have always hated me for taking everything from you. Clara loves me. She loves me. She will come. She will bring me what I need. Just wait. He waited. She did not come. Not once. Not for a single visit. The only person who came to the hospital every day was me, because watching the look on his face had become genuinely one of the most satisfying things I had ever experienced. After a week, Sebastian crawled. I mean that literally. He slid from the bed to the floor while I was in the room and grabbed the hem of my trousers with both hands. He had no dignity left and did not seem to know it. Daniel, he said, please. I am begging you. Just let me see her once. Just once. I will do anything. His eyes were empty in a way I recognized, because I had seen it in the eyes of others before him. I looked at him for a while. Long enough to truly appreciate it. Then I said, all right. I'll take you to her. I took him to the basement. The smell hit him before he had taken 3 steps inside. The metallic, ancient smell of old blood soaked into walls that had not been cleaned in a long time. He gagged. I apologized politely. She never liked cleaning up afterward, I explained. It is a habit she has always had. I walked him through the rooms, introducing each one the way a host might walk a guest through a family gallery. This one here was Conqueror number 28. He used to burn me with cigarettes, so we returned the experience. I gestured to a row of sealed jars on a shelf. And those are what remain of Conqueror number 15. He wanted to dismantle me for parts, so we accommodated him. Sebastian had stopped walking. The color had left his face completely. At the very end of the basement, I opened the last door. The room was small and cold. Against the far wall there was an iron cage. Inside the cage there was a woman. Her body was covered in wounds, old and new, layered on each other like the rings of a tree. The moment she saw me, she lurched toward the cage door, wrapping her hands around the bars and shaking them as hard as she could, making a sound that could not quite become words. Sebastian looked at her face and screamed. He fell backward and landed hard on the floor, pointing at her with a trembling hand. Why does she look exactly like Clara? Why does she look exactly like her? I helped him up gently. Because, I said, she is your actual heroine. The woman you fell in love with was never Clara. The woman you fell in love with was her twin sister, Nadia, playing a role. The system's voice, thin and stunned, filtered through the air, so that was the anomaly with the heroine. She was replaced. Sebastian turned and ran. He made it 3 steps before a baseball bat connected with the back of his skull and he went down and stayed down. Nadia, the NPC who had spent months impersonating the heroine, walked into the light. She was wearing heavy makeup and a white dress, and the baseball bat was resting across her shoulder like she had been carrying it all her life. She was smiling. My name is Daniel. I am the malicious supporting character in a novel. Clara was the one who told me, though she had no idea what she was giving me at the time. I was 22 years old when all of this began, and I was completely and pathetically devoted to her. Even knowing what she was, even having seen what I had seen, I loved her. I still cannot fully explain it. On the day I confessed to her, she accepted my flowers gracefully and said yes. That night she invited me to her home to study. I was nervous when I pushed open the study door. I was not expecting 3 other people to be inside. They tied my wrists. They put a dog chain around my neck. They told me to get on my hands and knees and bark. I refused. So they beat me until I could no longer tell which parts of me were hurt and which were not. Clara pressed the sole of her shoe against the side of my head and ground a lit cigarette out against my cheek. What exactly are you refusing? She said, calm and interested. I am the heroine of this world. You are the simp. That is the role you were given. Look at where you are and understand your place. I do not remember much after that. I remember that my clothes were soaked through with blood and that the room had gone very quiet. I know they were all dead before I lost consciousness. Clara was the last one. But when Clara died, something inside me detonated like a charge going off in a sealed room, and then I died too. When I opened my eyes again, I was in my childhood bedroom. Small. The wallpaper I had chosen at 8 years old. The window with the broken latch. Everything had started over. It took time to understand. I was an NPC. In this story I was cast as the malicious supporting character, the resentful childhood friend, the obstacle. My function was to adore the heroine, to stand in the path of the male and female leads, to be humiliated by both, and ultimately to be removed. I was a mechanism. A gear in someone else's story. My life, my losses, my grief, my father, all of it existed only to give weight and texture to a narrative that was never about me. But my parents were real. My friends were real. The happiness I had felt, the fear, the love, none of that had been written for me. It was mine. It had happened in my body and in my life, and it was real. So why was I required to live like a machine? Why was I required to kneel in the dirt while someone else stepped over me? Why was I required to participate, over and over again, in the same game, knowing that it had already been decided who would lose? I started to resist. Every small deviation from the plot brought pain, immediate and total, because the system could not afford NPC rebellion. So I stopped trying to deviate and started thinking instead. For a long time, I thought. And eventually I arrived at a plan. I called it, to myself, the System Eradication Plan. I could not act freely. So I needed someone who could. I needed a blade that was not mine, and I needed to choose carefully. The heroine Clara was useless to me. She served herself and only herself. But I had been watching for a long time, and I knew something almost nobody else did. Clara had a twin sister. Her name was Nadia. Where Clara had been handed everything effortlessly, Nadia had worked for every single thing she had ever gotten, and it had never been enough. The Hargrove family, bound by the story's invisible architecture, had treated Clara like a jewel and Nadia like an inconvenience. They locked her in rooms. They hit her and told her she was worthless. They said things to her that no parent should be able to say and still be called a parent. All of it because Clara was the heroine, blazing with the protagonist's halo, and Nadia existed only to make her shine brighter. Then one day Nadia fell into the river and was never found. Except she had not drowned. Clara had locked her away. Nadia's crime was effort. Her crime was refusing to stop trying. Clara found that quality deeply irritating in an NPC. So she put Nadia in the basement and kept her there like something she was not finished with yet. Nadia's wounds had healed and reopened and healed again so many times that her skin had become a record of every one of Clara's moods. There was one small window near the ceiling of her cage. Sunlight came through it in a narrow band each afternoon, lasting about 20 minutes. Nadia would stand and reach toward it with both arms outstretched, stretching as far as her height would allow. Every time she got close enough to feel the warmth, Clara would appear at the cage door and step on her fingers, slowly and carefully, until the bones cracked under her heel. That, Clara would say, is the correct posture for an NPC. On the ground. Reaching for nothing. And so Nadia had become exactly what Clara wanted her to become. A person who no longer believed in herself. A flower growing in a sealed room, spending its energy toward a light it could never actually reach. I pushed my hand through the cage bars. "Come with me," I said. "Let us walk out of this together." Both cages. The one made of iron and the one the system built over every NPC's head. She reached toward my hand. Then stopped. Pulled back. Her eyes were flat in a way that was not emptiness but the residue of enormous, long-sustained pain. "I am useless," she said. "I have tried so hard, for so long, and I can never equal her. My own parents cannot look at me. Even she says that someone like me deserves to stay in the dark. She's probably right." I reached further into the cage and held her hand. "You are not useless," I said. "Some people are both stupid and cruel. Because they cannot glow themselves, they spend their energy making sure no one near them can glow either. They are not judges. They are afraid." I let my voice drop lower. "She belongs in this cage. She has always belonged in this cage. So let us put her in it. And let us walk out." She looked at me. For the first time since I had found her, there was something alive and unbroken in her eyes. "All right," she said. That was the day Nadia took Clara's place as the heroine. From that point on, she moved through the world wearing Clara's face and Clara's role, and the system, which measured affection through gestures and actions and never truly looked beneath them, noticed nothing. Clara herself became the NPC in the cage. Every failed mission drained the system. The further into the plot the story progressed before collapse, the greater the energy loss when it finally fell apart. So we had to let the stories run. We had to cooperate, to follow the plot faithfully through to a certain point, again and again, 48 times, so that each failure would carve out a larger piece of the system's reserves. 48 conquerors. 48 rounds of being degraded and hurt and treated like furniture. And then Nadia took each of them apart, with patience and precision, and made sure they experienced every single thing they had done to me, multiplied. But even after 48 missions, the system held. So for the 49th attempt, we tried something different. We needed Nadia to cooperate with Sebastian's conquest fully, so fully that he would complete it, so he would feel confident enough to accept a second mission. Because a second completed mission unlocked a hidden pathway in the story's code. If Sebastian succeeded a second time, the system would receive an enormous energy reward and sustain itself indefinitely. If he failed the second time, he would be erased. And the energy the system had spent building toward that final moment would leave it completely hollow. It would lose control of the world entirely. This was the gamble. We were all betting everything. Sebastian woke up bound and immediately began fighting against the restraints with everything he had. From the room next door, someone was sharpening a knife. The sound of it, slow and rhythmic, metal dragging against stone, filled the silence between his gasps. Nadia was sitting on a swing we had hung from one of the basement's old ceiling beams. The hem of her white dress moved gently in the air. There were small dark stains on it, like dried rose petals. I stood behind her and pushed the swing, back and forth, easy and unhurried. Sebastian stared at me. Then at her. Then he began to cry, ugly and broken, the way people cry when they are past the point of caring how they look. Why? He demanded. I completed the conquest. Even if she was not the real heroine, her affection meter reached maximum. She was supposed to love me. Nadia stepped off the swing and walked toward him. She touched his face with 2 fingers. Because your system is a blunt instrument, she said. It measures affection through actions. It reads gestures. It cannot read what I actually feel. She tilted her head. Do you know what kept me cooperating with you throughout all of this? Sebastian was barely able to speak. His face was swollen and wet. I took Nadia's hand. The reason, I said warmly, was to kill you. I paused. You were right about one thing, I added. Prince Charming is always pure and shining. I looked at Sebastian with great sincerity. Unfortunately for you, I am the one who is her Prince Charming. Sebastian screamed for the system. He screamed its name repeatedly, demanding punishment, demanding that it remind an NPC what happened when he raised his hand against a protagonist. A mechanical voice spoke. It sounded tired. It is useless, host. Your mission has failed. You are going to be erased. My energy reserves are exhausted. I have already lost control of this world. A pause. How is this possible? The system said. It sounded genuinely bewildered. 2 NPCs. 2 people with nothing. How did they defeat me? The sound of the knife being sharpened in the next room blended with the wind coming through the small high window above us. Because you only ever looked at the surface, I said. That is why you could never hear what every NPC was saying underneath everything they did. That sound, the one underneath the obedience and the kneeling and the silence, that was the sound of people who wanted to be free. And it was loud enough to bring your entire structure down. Nadia sat back on the swing. She kicked her feet up and swung herself higher and higher, her dress lifting in the air, her face turned upward. Free. Like wind through an open window. The knife in the next room had been sharpened to the point where it could reflect a face clearly. Nadia picked it up and walked back to Sebastian. Her voice was quiet and her expression was calm and her eyes were the coldest I had ever seen them. You made Daniel knock his forehead on the floor 25 times, she said. Sebastian came apart completely. He screamed and wept and threw his body against the restraints until he was exhausted, his voice reduced to fragments. Every trace of beauty and confidence had been stripped away. What was left was just a man, ordinary and frightened, the way he had probably always been underneath the halo. Nadia reached into the bucket beside her and removed a toad. She pushed it into his open, screaming mouth, exactly the way he had once done to me. He could only produce muffled, helpless sounds. Nadia glanced back at me over her shoulder, and her smile was warm and completely unbothered. Do you want to go upstairs and wait for me? I considered it for a moment. Then I shook my head and smiled back at her. For something this beautiful, I am absolutely staying to watch. Epilogue. The system collapsed. The world restarted. Without the heroine's halo to carry her, Clara Hargrove became exactly what she had always been underneath the story's flattering light, an ordinary person with a talent for cruelty and absolutely no foundation to stand on. Her parents, no longer guided by invisible currents toward preferring her, looked at both daughters with the same eyes and saw clearly for the first time. Clara, without the protagonist's glow, was a cracked vase on a shelf. Decorative, already broken, useful to no one. At 16 she was imprisoned for school violence and negligent homicide. That is exactly where she belonged. Locked in a cage, in the dark, just like she had always deserved. Nadia's diligence and intelligence, her years of effort that the story had refused to see, finally became visible to everyone around her. Under a night sky without a moon she shone brightly, because she had always made her own light. A star generates its own heat. No one gave it to her, and no one could take it away. Clara, without the system, was like a moon without a sun. She had only ever reflected light that belonged to something else. Without that source, she went dark. My name is Daniel. Not the malicious supporting character. Not the obstacle. Just Daniel. I do not destroy love. I never have. My love is honest and it is mine. My father is alive. He is a driver. He is warm and patient and funny and kind, and he works hard because he loves his work, not because the plot required a sacrifice. He never developed cancer to give the story a tragic backstory. He was never placed on a hospital bed to tell me not to be sad. He is healthy. He is happy. He is going to live a long, ordinary, wonderful life. He adopted a stray dog from a shelter, a small mixed breed with enormous ears and a habit of sitting on feet. He named her Biscuit and gave her to me on my 20th birthday with a note that said he hoped my life would be full and warm. It is. Right now I am lying on the sofa with the afternoon light coming through the window, and Biscuit has climbed onto my chest and is licking my chin with great dedication. I know, I tell her, rubbing her ears. I like you too. The woman beside me goes still. Then she sits up straight, turns to face me, and narrows her eyes with the focused intensity of someone who has just been personally insulted. Who, Nadia says carefully, did you just say you liked? She climbs onto my lap before I can answer, both hands on my shoulders, looking at me with those enormous, serious eyes that are currently performing outrage very convincingly. I laugh. I cannot help it. Nadia, I say. Are you sick? Biscuit is a dog. She does not dignify this with a response. She leans forward, grabs my tie, and kisses me. It is a thorough, unhurried, comprehensive kiss, and by the end of it I have completely lost track of what I was saying. She pulls back just enough to speak, her lips still close to mine, her voice soft and slightly hoarse. You can only like me. I pull her into my arms. I press my face against her hair. I breathe her in. She tips her head up and kisses me again, and this time she also bites my earlobe, which I feel she knows is entirely unfair. You said I was your little kitten, she says against my ear. So tell me. Who do you like most? I hold on to her and I surrender without any resistance at all. You, I say. I like you most. She cups my face in both hands and looks at me the way the sun looks at everything it touches, like I am simply part of what it has decided to warm. Good, she says. This life, the next one, and every one after that. You can only like me most. She kisses me once more, gentle this time, and I hold her tighter. Okay, I say. And I mean it.